Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up, agri sector continues to contribute significantly to the country's economic growth despite threats from COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. Ahead, I'll speak with economist Professor Peter Quartey on how we can sustain this growth.
The next step for me to see is support to some selected large-scale commercial farmers who will pull the small-scale farmers along the value chain, like we find in the areas of blue skies, for instance.
Up a reaction from the Ghana Veterinary Services to this.
You go to a farmer and ask the farmer, you give the farmer the disinfectant without supervising the disinfection yourself as veterinary service officer, then you are not helping to control the spread of the virus.
I'll have the Deputy Director of the Veterinary Services Department on, as poultry farmers have experienced huge losses as a result of the bird flu outbreak. We have more on that story coming up here on the marketplace. Well, first up this afternoon, we have to deal with issues regarding the agri sector, and the agriculture sector continues to contribute significantly to the country's economic growth. This is despite the threats from COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. The sector grew 5.6% in the first quarter of this year. Director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Quartey, says there could be more room for improvement and is urging government to invest in commercializing the agri sector. I had an extended conversation with him. Take a listen.
Too surprised. It could have been better. It could have been better if we had inputs, we had fertilizers and other things. But I'm not too surprised because the effects of this Russia-Ukraine war started in 2022. I think people invest in agriculture prior to this war. So some of the output we are reaping in the first quarter of 2022 as a result of investment made earlier. But I must say that if it had not been this war, as well as COVID and other things that had affected cost of input, agri would have grown much faster than we are witnessing now.
And I guess what beats people is that we are not seeing that level of impact trickle to, let's say, the farmers, and also translate in, for instance, the availability of food, because you've complained recently of shortages and of hikes in prices.
Yes, that is understandable because if you look at Ghana is not insulated. We don't live on an island. Look at the Sahel region. They have had, since last year, have had challenges with their weather, with the agricultural systems. Apart from Burkina Faso, most of the countries surrounding us, especially those in the Sahel region. So a lot of food gets moved out of Ghana to those regions. If you go to the north and undertake a survey, you will find that a lot of the food we produce here gets exported to this country. So in as much as we are producing, the demand outstrip how much we are supplying. That's why we don't feel it here. They are prepared to pay higher prices. People are, even despite the ban on exportation of some food crops, people still smuggle them outside the country. So that's how come we are not feeling the impact of how much we are producing in terms of lower food prices. There is a lot of demand from our neighbors.
And does it also go to say that government's programs are working? For instance, the Planting for Food and Jobs program, the agri minister says he will score himself 100% for execution. We know that there are other people who have criticized the program and said it hasn't been that effective. What does it say about government's interventions in the sector?
Well, I think the interventions have been good, except to say that there is room for improvement. Um, we have to support the value chain process. If you provide fertilizers, provide inputs, yet your warehouse system is not ready at the time, if you provide all of that and your roads are not good, you have not achieved the 100%. So I think it could have been better, but then the interventions in terms of supplying inputs has been good. The next step for me to see is support to some selected large-scale commercial farmers who will pull the small-scale farmers along the value chain. Like you find in the areas of blue skies, for instance, you find a Kumfi, fruit juice, and they have cultivated large scale, large tracts of land, and that affects the whole community. If we get quite a number, 20, 30 of such large scale commercial farmers, uh, I believe will do a lot, particularly in the food growing areas, but not just production, it's through the value chain where you have storage, you have a processing system, you have transportation system, all of those processes well coordinated, well aligned, and supported.
And so, obviously, these figures are for the first quarter of this year. That was just about the time that the Russia's invasion of Ukraine started. And so, what's your outlook for the second quarter? We've been dealing with this war for 3 months. Do you think that this growth would be sustained or would have a different outcome at the end of this?
We may either sustain or maybe increase it marginally. But normally, if you look at the trend, first quarter growth rates are not very high. Then second, third, or the last quarter, that's where we see a lot of growth in GDP, a higher growth in GDP. But with the Russia-Ukraine war, certainly is going to have a knock-on effect on production. But I must say, most of our agriculture are rain-fed. The use of fertilizers, etc. Yes, we do use them, but our agriculture is rain-fed. We have not done much with irrigation. And as usual, the rains have been good this year, and therefore I expect that we either maintain this growth rate or at best increase it marginally.
Even despite the shortage of fertilizer, we are told.
Sorry?
I'm saying that you expect it to be maintained, and I'm just saying that even despite the complaints about the shortage of fertilizer from the farmers.
Yeah, the complaint didn't start this year. Right from last year, we were told that suppliers have not been paid for a year or two. Some have, and we did a survey of the various networks that support agricultural system, and we found that some suppliers have not been paid for about a year, or some say 2 years they have not been paid. So complaints about fertilizer did not start in 2022 as a result of the Russian-Ukraine war. It has been with us, and despite that, we have recorded this growth rate. So I believe that given that the rains have been very good, we are likely to record some positive growth rates, especially in agriculture.
And well, generally, economic growth slowed 3.3% for the first quarter. Your assessment of that as well, and where you think that we are headed as a country?
Yes, it slowed down marginally. I think 3.3, 3.6, so marginal slowdown. But as I mentioned, usually in the first quarter, you don't see much activity. It is second, third, and the last quarter that you see more growth. But if the global issues don't affect us too much or things ease, then we are likely to record higher growth numbers. But if the trend continues, then we may record similar growth rates. Because what is happening globally in terms of the supply chain effects, China's zero tolerance for COVID-19, and therefore affecting global supply chain, the Russian-Ukraine war, which is affecting fertilizer, gas, and many other things to the global world. It's all affecting inputs. And certainly, when any of these developed countries cough, we catch a cold. So we are likely to get the knock-on effects.
And aside from agric, which has driven the growth for the first quarter, where else should government put their monies?
It should be manufacturing, and I've always kept saying that manufacturing, because manufacturing, agric and manufacturing are the two key sectors that employs the greater proportion of people. If you want to affect livelihood, if you want to create jobs, those are the two critical areas you have to look at. As for services, mostly you find the growth coming from ICT, financial services. But agric and manufacturing are the key areas. I see manufacturing growing by only 2.6%. It tells you that the effect on employment is not going to be very significant, and we ought to invest more in that area. Provide enabling environment for.
All right, my conversation there with Professor Peter Quartey on agri sector's performance. As reported by the Ghana Statistical Service, it continues to drive economic growth. It grew by 5.6% in the first quarter of this year. We'll still stick with agri because poultry farmers are calling for more help to curtail the spread of bird flu. They're asking the Ghana Veterinary Services Department to reduce charges for disinfecting farms as they continue to make huge losses. Listen to Vice President of the Greater Accra Poultry Farmers Association, Kwame Intim Dodu, speaking to us earlier this week.
I should say we should step up. The Veterinary Services Department must step up the effort. Because like I said, if you go to a farmer and ask the farmer, you give the farmer the disinfectant without supervising the disinfection yourself as veterinary service officer, then you are not helping to control the spread of the virus. The farmer may reluctantly do it or may not do it at all. If that person lost all his or her birds and realizes or thinks he or she is never going to go back into the poultry business, he might just forget about disinfecting the place. After all, he's not going to do the poultry farm again. And that makes that point a further risk point for the spread of the virus. That is, we expect the Veterinary Services Department to go and disinfect, kill the remaining birds, and then to disinfect the whole environment against further spread of the virus from that point to other points or other farms. But the same farmers, they move from one farm to other farm looking for jobs. So if that farm was affected and the worker has nowhere to go, he looks for another place to go and get a job there, another farm. And we also have the value chain. Drivers, cars that send food to these farms move from farm to farm. So the potential of spreading the virus from that point to other farms is there. That is why we expect the vet services to supervise, to do this or supervise the disinfection and control of the virus.
All right, joining us with a reaction is Dr. Joseph Kofi Abu, who is Deputy Director of the Veterinary Services Department. Grateful you could join us, sir. And so I want to first pick your thoughts or your reaction to the concerns raised by the poultry farmers concerning the charges for disinfecting farms. They say that those are very high costs for them.
Yeah, good afternoon to Joy FM and good afternoon to all listeners. Yes, I've listened to the president of the Ghana Poultry Farmers Association and the complaints from the farmers. Yes, it is true that we visit farms, do whatever we could, and after that, we give disinfectant for the farmers to do. The farmers who had outbreak in 2021 will testify that we started doing it very, very well in collaboration with the district assemblies. And what we do is that the bird flu control is a shared responsibility between the VAZ, the MMDS, and the farmers. But most of it starts with the farmers. We are saying that we have trained the farmers to undertake biosecurity measures on their farm, but they refuse to do that. So when the outbreak comes, what we do is that we mobilize with the district assemblies where we have the Department of Agriculture, the Ministry of Health, the Environmental Health Unit, and NADMO. Where it's available, we move to the farm together. And veterinary services, our main aim is to get the best destroyed and buried. The environmental health are supposed to help us carry out with the disinfection. But most of the cases, you go and even at the district level or the municipal level, the environmental health unit, they don't have the motorized machine to work on that. But I recommend the Pong Katamanso and Tamawest and Guy East, they help us a lot with Zoom Lion and other things, logistics that they brought in to disinfect some farms. And we have evidence to that. So it is not that all farms, smaller farms of about 1,000 to or less than 1,000 birds, sometimes
all right,
we try to tell the farmers to carry out their own disinfection.
Well, obviously, these are challenging times for the poultry farmers. They have to grapple with the high cost of operating as well. And so are you saying there's nothing that can be done in terms of reducing or reviewing the charges? Because I've heard them also say...
No, we don't charge. We are not charging them a penny.
You're not charging them a penny?
We charge them not. We collect nothing from them. We give them the disinfectant free. Even, we go to the farms, and farmers, even most farmers don't give us even water. We go to some of them early in the morning, we go to some of them late in the night, and some of them we leave there after 2 a.m., 3 a.m. We go and destroy their beds, bury them, and even water. We don't get even water from some of them. So I'm not sure they are talking about the high cost of the operation, but they are talking about us giving them disinfectant and not coming back to them. But under the circumstances, veterinary services is doing its best to control and stop the spread of the disease. As of now, we don't have any operational fund that has been disbursed to the regional veterinary officer to carry out this disinfection. I and my staff, we are using our own monies to trek to farms day and night and work and come back and bring the results. We are waiting. We are also giving out our grievances to the higher authority.
Okay.
Our main aim was to compensate the farmers. So the money that was allocated for the operations, the first tranche of money has been used to pay the farmers who had outbreak in 2021.
All right, and so
all the monies that we have used, our own money, some people use their own money to take the pit where the animals were buried, and as of today, it has not been refunded to us. So we also have our own challenges, but the farmers don't know.
Okay, so the Veterinary Services Department, sorry to cut you.
Veterinary Services Directorate, and we are not helping them to control the disease. We are doing our best. Whether it is Saturday, Sunday, they can testify.
Dr. Abu,
move to the farms and carry out what we are supposed to do. They are supposed to do.
Can you hear me, Dr. Abu?
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah. So you need an operational fund to be able to curtail the spread of bird flu. You are also saying that the farmers... Yes. Can you just let me land? You're also saying that the farmers also are not paying anything for the disinfection of the farms, which we'll investigate, because the vice president told us they were being charged 30 cedis. We'll investigate that. But I want us to, in the next 1 minute, talk about how well we are doing in fighting the outbreak of the bird flu. Are we making progress?
Okay. Yeah, the outbreak started in July 2021, precisely 8th July. And as of today, 129 farms affected. In 2021, 66 farms were affected, and these farmers who were due for compensation have been compensated. As of today, 63 farms are affected in 2022. If we look at the trend, and in 2021, in January, we had 25 outbreaks. In February, we had 19. In March, 1. In April, nothing. So from March to April, we knew we had controlled the disease. But in May, we have 3 outbreaks in Greater Accra. In June, we have 15. and there are still some pending at the laboratory, meaning that the disease is coming back, and we attribute all this thing to the farmers not adhering to proper disposal of waste and dead beds.
Okay. We'll be looking at this in subsequent days. As you're warning, the outbreak is returning, and so we have to deal with it. Thank you so much, Dr. Abu, Deputy Director of the Veterinary Services Department. We'll link up for an extensive conversation on this because it is important. Well, we have with us on Zoom Anthony Morrison, who is Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. If you're on, I just want to pick your reaction quickly if you're monitoring to the concerns raised by the Veterinary Services Department. They say they don't have an operational fund to, fight the outbreak of bird flu.
Thank you very much, Daryl, and good afternoon once again. I think that the current situation on the agriculture level is not the best. We need to make sure that the industry that has the largest employment avenue for the sector is adequately catered for. We have also been talking to some other stakeholders to see how we can also support in this engagement. Particularly, I'm worried about the fact that farmers who have been given the medication or the vaccines are not applying them. And this is how we need to do a peer review or a peer check on each other. Subsequent to that, I also think that as part of the ongoing intervention, the poultry industry right now is collapsing, and there is a critical need for the sector to be heavily supported. We do know that the COVID and also the cost of feed have attributed to almost the collapse of about 600 to 800 poultry farms. And we know that the current situation also with regards to the disease is also attributing heavily to that. I mean, just in Greater Accra alone, we have over 200 poultry farms that have lost a lot of birds. So this can be the best situation for us. It has been in this light that we have been looking for or pushing for government to set up the Ghana Agriculture Pandemic Fund. If there was such a pandemic fund available, all these issues with regards to operational funds and access to farmers and how to also make sure that there are daily and frequent routine in terms of visiting of these farms and to make sure such challenges does not escalate. So these are some of the things that we need to do as a country. We have gotten to a stage now that we don't expect foreign partners to give us money to do what we need to do. That's the most important thing.
And Anthony, despite the COVID-19 pandemic and then the war in Ukraine, the agri sector seems to be doing well, at least according to the first quarter numbers from the Ghana Statistical Service. The agri sector continues to drive economic growth. It grew by 5.6%. Your reaction to these figures, especially when, you guys say you're not feeling the impact on the ground?
Yes, we need to further look at the data, the 5.6. Which sector of the agriculture sector are we getting these figures from? It's not the totality of it. Yes, of course, some sector is performing very well. Okay, we also do know that we are importing a lot as well in terms of our food. So if we are bringing a lot of raw materials to complement that of the local ones, is it being added to it as doing well? Because we know that in terms of inflation, the impact it is having on our industry. So if the agriculture sector is doing well, yes, in terms of, with reference to investment, yes, that is key for us. It's good that it can generate some additional investment into the industry, but we need to also look at the data available. Does the data available support the data we are getting from the statistical services? Which sector? Is it the poultry industry? Is it the maize, the rice, the soya, the millet industry? Is it the vegetable industry? Is it the cocoa? Or just that the service industry, which is the processing, which is almost impossible because the raw materials are not available, the processing cannot be doing well. So we need to find out which sector of the agriculture industry is doing. Then we can look at how we can sustain the gains that has been made. And the areas that are not doing well, we see how we can design a more sustainable interventions for these areas.
Well, speak of sustainable interventions, Anthony, I have 1 minute. I just want to ask you, does this tell us or show us that government's interventions have worked over the period? And speaking with Professor Peter Quartey, he says, well, the problem right now is not maybe a lack of fertilizer, as most farmers would point out, but the fact that we haven't commercialized agric enough to reap the benefits of the sector.
Yes, I perfectly agree with Professor Peter Quartey on that. We haven't mechanized agriculture well enough. The irrigation penetration rate is currently lower than 17% across board. We've also lacked extensively a number of high-quality inputs that are needed in the industry. But let me also add that it is we have come of age as a country to continue to rely heavily on the age-old farmers who have been providing for us. This is a time to heavily invest into commercial agriculture. And that is the reason I agree with Professor Peter Quartey. Now, secondly, as a country, we have not heavily supported agriculture in terms of financing. It's very or almost difficult to access financing. And if you look at most of the commercial farms that are doing well today, they are doing well because, yes, there have been some interventions from the developer partners that have developed some unique interventions based on our country priority areas. So if we are looking at sustainability, yes, we need to look at how we can provide a sustainable financing for the industry, and also market. Market is key. And we have also not done well in providing the needed or critical incentives for youth to actively engage in agriculture.
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I appreciate it. Anthony Morrison, the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Agribusiness. And that's The Marketplace. Thanks for watching, everyone. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Daryl Kwawu. Thanks for watching.